When you think of the best second baseman since 2010, there's a couple names that probably come to mind. At the early part of that time frame, players like Robinson Cano and Dustin Pedroia were at the top of their game. Currently, players like Jose Altuve and Mookie Betts are dominating the position and winning MVP awards. Those are the players that we will remember for a very long time and might have a chance to get into Cooperstown barring some other issues that some of them have. That often leaves out some players that did have really great careers or good years that just end up not having a space in our memory. A great example of this is someone who played just last season and put together over a decade in Major League Baseball by the name of Jonathan Schoop. He was never a superstar and was only an all-star once, but he put together incredible numbers across his career, not only offensively but also defensively, and he's someone who probably never got the respect he actually deserved. Will he make it into Cooperstown? No. Will he make it into the Orioles Hall of Fame? Also, no. But he still had a very respectable career and actually put up better numbers than you remember. In this video, we'll dive into the career of Jonathan Schoop, and although he hasn't officially retired, it looks like things in Major League Baseball are at a close for him. There's always a chance he can come back, but as of right now, his career seems to be final, and it's definitely something that we should look back on in a couple of years and say, you know, maybe he was better than we remember. Before we begin, it would really mean a lot if you could subscribe to the channel. It tells me you like what I make and will get you more content not only from me, but from awesome other baseball creators out there as well. Without further ado, let's dive into the often forgotten career already of Jonathan Schoop. Schoop was born in Willemstad, Curaçao, and was a baseball star from a young age, playing in the Little League World Series twice for the Pabao Little League team based out of Willemstad. They finished third in 2003 and won the entire tournament in 2004, and he played alongside his brother and former top prospect in baseball Jurickson Profar. He signed as an international free agent in the 2008 signing class with the Baltimore Orioles and shot up the ranks, getting to the Futures game with Manny Machado in 2011, and was named the Brooks Robinson Player of the Year for the best player in the Orioles system at the end of 2011. Heading into 2012, he was ranked the number 82 prospect, the third in the Orioles organization by Baseball America. He was called up on September 25th, 2013 at age 21, and in his first game he had a single and a home run. Because of the late season call-up, he only played in 5 games, but if that small sample size was a good omen, good things were going to come for the former top 100 prospect. He got regular playing time at second base in his first full year, playing in 137 games, and although he was weak offensively with a 209, 244, 354 slash line, which leads to a 65 OPS plus, he did slug 16 home runs and had 12 defensive run saves, showing that he was an above average defender at second base and one of the best in the game. He never walked a ton in his career, and this year was a great example of that. He only walked 2.7% of the time. That amounts to 13 walks across 137 games. 1 walk every 10 games is not a great number, and that really kept his on-base percentage numbers relatively low throughout his entire career. His defensive contributions helped lead the Orioles to their first American League East pennant since 1997, but that offense didn't help in the ALCS, where he hit 1 for 11 and the Royals officially swept the Orioles en route to making the World Series. Early in 2015, Schoop ended up getting injured, partially tearing his PCL and spraining his MCL, which put him out for about 6 weeks, but he came back strong with a 279, 306, 482 slash line, a 111 OPS, and slugged another 15 home runs. Add that on top of his above average defense, and it seemed like Schoop was finding his form. He was only 23 this season, and a lot of times it takes a lot of effort and growth for someone to be successful at the major league level. There's not a ton of Juan Sotos or Bryce Harpers who can come in as a teenager and dominate, but maybe Schoop was finally finding his form. The Orioles finished exactly 500, so there was no postseason revenge this time, but things were looking up for Schoop's career. 2016 was characterized by consistency. He played in all 162 games, he found his power stroke, and he didn't sacrifice much contact. As a matter of fact, he actually struck out less in 2016 than he did in 2015. Put together a very solid 267, 298, 454 slash line, which is a league average OPS, but he hit 25 home runs. The Orioles hit 56 home runs in June, which was the third most all-time for a team, and they hit 55 in August. They were the first team to hit 55 home runs in 2 months of the same season to that point. He was also one of 5 Orioles with 25 home runs, joining Mark Trumbo, Chris Davis, Manny Machado, and Adam Jones. That was the 12th time in history that 5 players had hit 25 home runs. The Orioles finished with 257 home runs, which is the 5th best in baseball at that time. Now, after the juiced era of 2019, that's obviously changed. They've dropped a significant amount, but at the time, that was a big accomplishment. After putting together a first solid season in the big leagues, it makes sense that 2017 ended up being a career year for Schoop. He put together an above-average slash line, a career-high 124 OPS plus, and 32 home runs, 105 RBI, put up a very solid 6.5 BWAR. Not to mention, he had 14 defensive runs saved at second base, which was the best in the American League, and he ended up being an All-Star and 12th in AL MVP voting. His success in 2017 brought about monetary rewards as well, as he more than doubled his salary from $3.5 million that year to $8.5 million in 2018. After cashing in arbitration, Schoop looked to cash in once again in 2018, his last year before free agency, and secure a big payday going forward. However, a cold start to the year brought that hopes down a little bit, but in 85 games with Baltimore, he had a 244, 273, 447 slash line, which led to a 95 OPS plus, and he did keep up that good defense while there. That was slightly inflated, however, by a streak at the end of July where he tied the record for the most consecutive games with a home run from a second baseman with 5. Without that, those numbers would be slightly less deflated, especially that slugging number. However, that hot streak got the Brewers interested, and a trade deadline deal was struck, as the Brewers sent Jonathan VR and prospects Luis Ortiz and Gene Carmona, who both never really amounted to much, over to Baltimore for Jonathan Schoop's services. During his time in Baltimore, Schoop was never a superstar player, but he put together a surprisingly decent career that would surprise people looking back. He put up 6.5 WAR in 2017, which was 7th among all players. He had 5 offensive WAR that year, which was by far his best, and 6 overall in the American League. He played in 162 games in 2016 and almost matched that total the following year, showing a lot of resilience. He had the first in the American League in putouts in 2017 and assists in 2016 and 2017. He had really great defense and put together a couple solid offensive years that catapulted him into a actually good player that a lot of people just ended up not talking about. Despite the change of scenery, he continued to struggle, and he also struck out a ton during his half-year stint in Milwaukee.
You want to see me do it again?
Those offensive woes continued to the postseason as the Brewers lost to the Dodgers in the NLCS, where his good friend and old teammate Manny Machado did this to end the game. The one thing we did get from his time with the Brew Crew is maybe Anthony Rendon never cared about baseball even before he got the big money extension. After a dismal offensive performance with the Brewers, the Twins decided to bank on Schoop's defense and signed him to a 1-year, $7.5 million deal to be their starting second baseman for the 2019 season. He rewarded them with a somewhat bounce-back year offensively with a 256, 304, 473 slash line, which leads to a 102 OPS plus, but the trend ended up shifting completely away as he graded out as a negative defender at second base with -2 defensive run saves. Although fielding percentage does have its flaws, he also had the worst fielding percentage by a second baseman in all of Major League Baseball that year. A big part of his offensive success was hitting the long ball, as 2019 was the peak of the juice ball era and the Twins were just hitting home runs left and right. He hit 23 that year and was one of 7 Twins with over 20 home runs, and as a team, they hit for the now MLB record 307 for a season, and that has now been tied by the Braves in 2023. However, the Twins really liked what they got, but they had other prospects coming up and other people who they were looking forward to having play second base, and Schoop was let go as a free agent and was not re-signed. Before the pandemic struck, the Tigers decided to sign Schoop to be their starting second baseman for a 1-year, $6.1 million deal. They were hoping that defense would bounce back a little bit, and it did, as he did grade out as a positive defender, but after about 40 games, he got hit on the wrist with a fastball batting, and he was out for the rest of the year. The Tigers didn't make the postseason, so it wasn't a end-all be-all injury, but still, Schoop was having a career resurgence of somewhat with a 116 OPS plus, and it seemed like things were going right for Schoop until that injury. The Tigers liked what they saw in Schoop, so they re-signed him the following year, and in 2021 he put together another very solid year, a 278, 320, 435 slash line, which led to a 109 OPS plus, and he hit another 21 home runs. He also led the Tigers with 84 RBI, and yes, RBI is a flawed stat, but still, for a team like the Tigers in 2021 that were not very good, he was one of their best hitters. One thing to note is he did actually shift over to first base. He wasn't a primary second baseman anymore, and that wasn't due to a lack of skill, but more out of necessity. Miguel Cabrera was old, and former teammate Renato Nunez struggled mightily at first base, leaving a gaping hole that Schoop decided to fill. Given his contributions to the team, the Tigers decided to bring him back with a 2-year extension heading into 2022, and it paid off for Schoop personally as he got to hit 1,000 in his career, becoming just the third Curacao to get to 1,000 hits behind Andrew Jones and Andrelton Simmons. However, that accolade does not paint to his entire offensive performance, as he's batted for a .202 batting average, the lowest qualified hitter in the American League. a .239 on-base percentage, which is the lowest in all of baseball, and a .322 slugging, which is not great and mostly aided by his 11 home runs that season. His .561 OPS was the lowest in all of the major leagues, and he also had the highest percentage of softly hit balls at 24.1% of all of his balls hit in the major leagues. 2023 was marred with some of those same struggles as he hit a .213, .278, .272 slash line. It didn't hit a single home run in his 55 games with the Tigers. That's a little bit concerning as he hit 32 in 2017, 21 just 2 years before, 11 a year before. Things did not look great for Schoop, and he got designated for assignment and released in July. That marked the end of his time with the Tigers and potentially his time in Major League Baseball. Schoop is not old by any means. He's 32 right now, and he'll be 32 for the rest of the Major League season, and he currently plays for the Algodones de Unión Laguna in the Mexican League, so it's not like he's rusty. He's getting at-bats and maintaining his shape as a baseball player. Not only that, he continues to play in international competitions for Curacao or the Netherlands, playing in the 2024 Caribbean Series, the 2023 World Baseball Classic, and he's even played for them all the way back in 2011, where in the Baseball World Cup, they won gold and he got the final out against Cuba. In terms of a storybook career, Jonathan Schoop might have a sneaky case to be one of the best. No, he was never a superstar, he was only an all-star once, never got top 10 in MVP votes, and was never really a household name, but he had a surprisingly good career and a surprisingly good life. 2 times to the Little League World Series, 3rd place once, winning it all a 2nd time, playing for his country throughout his entire life, over a decade in Major League Baseball with nearly 20 B-WAR. He's put together a very awesome career with an All-Star Game appearance and a lot of support from Baltimore, Minnesota, Milwaukee, and Detroit. Although he will never be a Hall of Famer, he probably won't even make the ballot, maybe as one of the last names in, but Jonathan Schoop has had a phenomenal career if you really look into what he's done for his teams and the value he's produced not only in Major League Baseball, but also for his country. Jonathan Schoop is such an interesting case as he was never a household name, never someone that people loved. Not many people have his name on the back of their jerseys, but he was an impact player at the Major League level and provided a lot of interesting memories and a really, really interesting career when you dig into the numbers. In 10 years, maybe Jonathan Schoop will be appreciated a little bit more for what he did on the baseball diamond. Right now, it's easy to look back and say he was never that good, but we're looking at players like Bobby Abreu sticking on the Hall of Fame ballot, as I don't think anyone watching Bobby Abreu said he was going to be a Hall of Famer, but he was really good for a very long time. Schoop is never going to reach those heights, but looking back on his career and potentially even more career that could happen later, Schoop is a compelling case to be a sneaky 20-WAR guy who provided a lot for a team, and although there were some up and downs to his career, some really high highs and some really, really low lows, that's what makes baseball interesting. And people like Jonathan Schoop are what keep people interested and excited. How can you have a guy hit for over 30 home runs and then just a couple years later end up being designated for assignment as a basically nobody that one of the worst teams in baseball doesn't want? Schoop is such a compelling case and an interesting story to look at, and I hope you enjoyed diving into his career and hopefully get excited if he does ever make the jump back to Major League Baseball to watch him play again. Thank you so much again for watching all the way through. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel. It really, really helps a lot and will get you more content from me and other people out there as well. And I hope to see you in the next video.